The first week of each month we do an absolute beginner session, which we did last week, and then the other weeks we do more advanced sessions, but we are aimed at the beginners, so any questions are welcome. You can ask through the YouTube chat, or you can ask questions through Slack, and there's instructions below in the YouTube video or on the meetup page on how to here it is, Slack space, so email skypieproject@gmail.com, so replace dot with a dot and @ with the @ symbol. So today we write command line programs and how to run them from Python. So all you need to have installed on your computer is Python, which you can get from python.org. So I'll just open up that, show you what the site looks like. There we go, and in downloads you can download version 3.9.7, so this works on Mac, Windows or Linux. On Linux you've probably got Python already installed. Okay, and all the session, we have a session summary that we store on GitHub, and so tonight's session summary is already up there. So I'll just show you how to navigate to it. Now if you're looking at YouTube, I've put the full link directly to the session that we're going to be using, but if you're looking at the meetup page, this just takes us to GitHub, and so we'll go to GitHub by clicking on session summaries, and we'll find the ones that's in online, and it'll be meetup 115. There it is, and so this is the code we'll be looking at tonight, so you can look at the raw version of that or you can download it. Okay, so task 1 here is how do we run a Python 3 console from the command line. Now when you installed Python, I would have asked you, do you want Python put on the path, or if you're running Mac and Linux, it should already be on the path. If you're running Windows, then you can run this command if you tick the box to say it is on your path. If you didn't tick the box, Windows still installs another program called py.exe, and that is always on the path, so you can use that instead. And we'll look at tonight, and we'll actually see why you should probably always use py.exe rather than python.exe, because it does a few other things for us as well. So let's have a look. If I'm on Windows here. I presume most people are on Windows. If you're on Mac and you've got any Mac specific questions, you can ask me in the questions, and I'll see if I can help you. So if I just type in Python 3, actually that's for Mac. If I just type Python, you can see it opens up a console. I've got version 3.9.5 installed, and that works because Windows has Python on my path where I've configured it in environment variables. Ask a question if you want me to show you how to add it to the path, but if you use py you won't even need that. Now we can quit out of there, and we can also run it by py.exe. And once again that opens up Python for us. Now you may, if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know I always like to create a virtual environment to run Python, and the reason I do that is because whenever we install third-party libraries, we don't want the third-party libraries that we've installed for this Python project to interfere with our other Python projects. So we isolate each of our Python projects into their own Python virtual environment, and it's very easy to create a virtual environment. First of all, so I'm in command prompt here. So I'm going to make a directory. That should be the same command on Mac, in which I'm just going to do all the work for tonight. So I'm just going to call one Beginners Python Machine Learning 115, and I'll change into that directory. 115. And so when I'm in here, there's nothing in here at the moment, so I'm going to create a virtual environment. So the command to create the virtual environment is to run Python, and py, what it'll do, it's always on the path, so I can always just type it, and it'll find the latest version of Python that you've got installed. So if you've got several versions of Python installed, it'll just grab the latest one. There's also command line arguments you can use to select a specific Python, or you can even select Python 2, but I think you'll mostly want to use the latest version you've got, and so we'll just use it there without any command line arguments for selecting version. So we type py, and then we're going to run a module, and the module we're going to run is venv, which comes with a standard Python install, and it's a virtual environment module. And we're going to create a virtual environment, and the one we're going to create, we'll just call it something. So I'm going to call mine venv115. So that should have created it. If I have a directory listing, you can see it's created a folder here called venv115, and in that is a Python install and some links that of places that I can install third-party libraries and not affect anything else. If you're using Anaconda, you can use conda create --name venv115, and also put in after it Python, and that'll say create a virtual environment with just Python in it. We don't want all the other stuff that comes with Anaconda, otherwise you'll create all these massive virtual environments every time you create one. Now the next step is to activate it. On Windows, we activate it using this command here. So I'm going to type in the command. So the command is in the folder, and it's in the scripts folder, so I'm just using tab completion here, which means I type the first letter or first couple of letters of the folder name and then press tab, and then it finds the rest of it for me. So if I type ack and I press tab, it finds activate for me. Now if I press enter, it activates the environment, and you can see here that venv115 is the active virtual environment we're using, and it'll always have the name here in front of my prompt on the command line. So now, even if I didn't have Python on my path, and if you're Mac or Linux, you can even now just type Python, and you don't even have to type Python 3, and it'll find the Python that's in our virtual environment, because that's the active one. And so you can see, just as before, it brought it up, and you'll have to take my word for it that that's the one in the virtual environment and not the system-wide one. So we'll quit out of the virtual environment and get back to the command line. So what we want to do now, we're going to create a Python script. So a script is just a single file that's got some Python code in it. We're going to call our Python script myname.py. On Mac or Linux, you can use the command line editor Nano. We're going to use on Windows Notepad, or if you've installed Notepad++, you can use that as well. You can also do this in an IDE like PyCharm or Spider or Visual Studio Code, or even Atom. There's lots of IDEs around to make your Python development easier, but we're just going to try to use the very basic tools tonight. So if I type Notepad, that'll run Notepad, and I'm going to give it a file name so it'll know what I'm trying to create. Do you want to create a new file? Yes, I do. That's good. So this is going to be my Python script in a file called myname.py. And it's going to be a very simple program. It's just going to print a string. It's going to be a format string. So we're going to precede the double quotes with an F. And it's just going to say my name is, and then if I use the curly braces, it means I can embed the value of an expression into the string, and the expression I'm going to use is just double underscore name double underscore, so that's 2 underscores before and after the name. You can just copy and paste it out of the document if you want. Let me know if you're having any problems with that. I can certainly go over any of these things again. So let's save that. That's saved. And back here on the command line, I now want to run the script. So all I have to do is I have to type py and then the name of the file, or on Mac and Linux is Python 3, or even just Python in front of the name of the file, because you should have your virtual environment activated. Alright, so it's come back and says my name is main. So because we ran it this way, that's the value that gets stored in this special, it's a special Python variable, which you'll see later how it can be used for particular things. Okay, so that's running it as a script from the command line. Now we want to try running it, run the Python console on the command line, and how do we run the program then? Okay, so we just run the console by typing Python without anything after it. So it brings up the console for us, and we can see we're in the console here with the 3 greater than signs. And then we type import my name. And you might remember the import command you've used in scripts before. And what import does, it actually opens up the other file and runs the entire file, and then closes it. But you can still then reference parts of the file in the environment that you're in. So we're in the console, or you could reference it from another script. Okay, so when I say import my name, the same program ran, and this time it says my name is my underscore name. So when I run it from the command line, it says my name is main, and when I run it from within a console, it says my name is my name. So you can see this is when I've used the import statement, it comes up with the name of the file that or the module that it's that's been imported. When you're running it as a script, it gives you main. So it's the main program that then imports other modules. So we can use this later on to find out whether the person who's running us is running us as a script on the command line, or running us as an import into another module. Now if I do that import again, I just press the up arrow there to quickly type the same line again. Nothing happens. And that's because Python knows that it's imported that module already. So it's got access to all the variables that have been defined in there, any functions that have been defined. They're all defined, so it thinks it doesn't need to run anything again. And so it, if I run it again, it won't run the print command. If I import it again, it just won't run it again. If I did that several times on the command line, it would run every time. So that's one thing you've got to be a little bit careful about if you're doing dual imports. Really the second import does nothing. Now sometimes, especially when you're developing code, especially if I was developing my name module, I'd be making changes to it, and if I want to import it again, I'd want to see the changes. So to do that, I would use these functions that you've got here in task 6. I'd use the import lib, and it allows me to reload my name just as if it had been imported again, and this time it runs it. So let's try that. There we go. So it reloads it, it reruns it. My name is my name. And then it actually returns a value, which is module my name. So that's what it returns. And you know that when you're using Python console, if the last expression that you did returns a value, then it will display that value. So for example, if I had an expression 2 plus 3, it would return 5, and so it displays that value 5. If I didn't want that value to be displayed, then what I should do is store it in a variable. So, you know, I could say m equals, and I'll just m equals import reload my name. So then it'll store the module in the variable m, and so I won't get that value being displayed on my console, but I've also got it in my module, in my variable m, which I can reference at any time that I want to. Okay, so we're up to task 7 now. Actually, we're getting through these tasks pretty quickly, so let me know if I'm going too quickly for you. There's not a lot of coding at this stage, it's just copying and pasting. Now, POSIX, on the POSIX command line, which is your Unix, Mac OS, Linux, BSD, they're all POSIX operating systems. They have a flexible way of linking a file to the executable that you want to run, and that's called the shebang line. And it looks like this. So it starts off with the hash and then an exclamation mark, and then it says how you want to run this file. So if you're running a script, it needs something to run it, and so what this is saying, you can put here the direct path to your Python 3 executable, or they've got another form which is more useful, and so this is the one I would always recommend, is if you say /user/bin/environment env, it says find Python on your path, or find whatever on the path, and then it says here what it's going to be, so Python. And you know, you can have other languages here, it could be Perl or it could be Ruby or other things, so it's just and you can even have a specific version of Python in this line. So it's a very flexible way of linking this file that you want to run to an executable. And when you do that, it means that you don't have to type Python 3 in front of the file name every time you want to run it. So if you see substitute Python, all right, so you can put different versions of Python, Python 2, and on Mac and Linux, then all you have to do is make the file executable by this command, change the mode of myname.py to add the executable flag, and then you can just run it by itself without putting Python 3 in the front. Now on Windows, our Python launcher, which is py.exe, will parse that shebang line just like it does on POSIX. And so there's another reason that they provided it to us on Windows, and it doesn't exist on other operating systems because the other operating systems don't need it. So I'd recommend putting this line in if you're trying to run stuff from the command line. Now I've been putting this line in a lot of my code. You'll see it's in a lot of the sample scripts in the GitHub. If you try running them from PyCharm, PyCharm will actually also parse this line and work out whether you want to run it in the terminal or whether you want to run it in the PyCharm running window. So just be aware if you find it running, PyCharm is going to use this, and PyCharm on Mac and Linux is also going to require that you've made the file executable. So that's a thing to watch out for on those operating systems. So let's go back to, we'll put this into our notepad. And so it's just a line at the beginning, and then we save that. And now if I use py, my name, and it runs. Now that's actually no different to before, but if you'd put in Python 2 there, then py would have found Python 2, and you'd need Python 2 installed for it to do that. Okay, now when you install Python on Windows, it'll often associate py to Python 3, so you can just type the file name and it'll just run because it associated with Python 3. Now that required no, it's probably just required py to be installed. Similarly, you can double click, so let's try double clicking. So I'll go to my home directory, and we created one called bpaml115, and there's the Python script. So if we double click on that, and that flashed up a window, ran the program, and finished so quickly it closed the window, and it did all that on my other monitor, so you didn't see anything at all. But and I can't make it come up on this monitor, so you're not going to see much there. But if you try running it on your own computer, you might see it flash up and disappear. Okay, what's next? Oh, okay, so when you're let's give you a little bit of a tutorial on the Unix command line. When you try to run and execute a file that's in the current directory, you can't just type the name of the file because the current directory is not on the path. So if you type the name of that file, it won't find it. Now it did here in on the command prompt, because in Windows command prompt the current directory is on the path. But if I went into PowerShell, and let's do that. We'll try PowerShell. Let's see if I can make it a bit bigger. So I want to go into bpaml115. I want to activate the virtual environment, and you see PowerShell's, when I press tab, it automatically puts a ./ in front, just like our // on POSIX. That's right, and then I say my name, and you see it's gone. If you want to execute that, you're going to need to put ./ in the front of it to make it work so that it can find it. And there you go, we've got no results from it. So let's try running it without the ./ and it can't find it. And that's because it's not on the path. And now let's try it with our Python. And we got a result. So I'm not sure why we didn't get a result from that one. But it found it, it just didn't do anything with it. Okay, so we'll talk a bit more about the command line now. The command line has ability to redirect input and output and use piping. So this is going to be the same in command prompt and the POSIX, so Unix command line, like the bash shell. So let's do an example of how to redirect the output. I'll do the first example here. So it'll be myname.py.